Hello everyone, and welcome to Zero Death's second Mythic Raid strategy guide, this time versus Soul Render Dormazain. Before we get into the Mythic mechanics, I'd like to take a second to review how we handle the heroic version of Soul Render in case there's anyone new to raiding with us. So we divide the room into 4 separate quadrants, so that when torments go out, we're able to call the safe zone. The quadrants are always as follows. The far left quadrant is 1, the far right with 4, with the middle 2 being 2 and 3 respectively. If we call, for example, 2 is the safe zone, the whole raid will move to the second quadrant and you'll be safe. When the tormented eruptions go out, we will call 1, and then typically it'll go in order 2, 3, 4. Once we get to the end of one of the sides, we will call for a movement ability such as a roar or windrush totem, because usually the next safe zone is 1. And so that will help the raid get across back to safety as efficiently as possible, all the while avoiding the swirlies that are popping up on the ground. An important tactic to note, the closer you are to the center, the less distance you actually have to cover, especially when you're going from 1 to 4 or 4 to 1. So it's much more efficient to hug the center as you're moving for these abilities. However, if you go into the center area, you're very likely to die, and so strongly suggest being very careful where you position yourself as you're running, especially if you're a demon hunter trying to jump across the middle or trying to use a warlock gate across the middle. Usually that does not work. And so that's pretty much the basics of our heroic fight. And so let's get into what's different on Mythic. Well, on Mythic, we're going to 5 heal the fight. Our 5 healing, there's a pretty strict DPS requirement on this fight, and so we can't really go over 5 healers, even though there is a ton of damage going out. So with that being said, the main change from Mythic is that there will be a Mossworn Overlord ad that spawns. So let's take a quick second to go over how we're going to handle the ads. I'm going to theoretically place out the ads in these different quadrants here as so. And after those ads come out, the Mossworn Overlord will also come out. And so on Mythic, we're going to actually assign people to CC each of these individual ads. And so there'll be people like a monk, a demon hunter, or a DK. DK can Chains of Frost one of the ads. The demon hunter can imprison, and the monk can paralyze. And we'll assign them based on their symbols. So the monk will be star, and the demon hunter would be a circle, respectively. Now, important to note that not necessarily will the ads spawn in each individual quadrant. Sometimes you'll get them doubled up. So let's take a look at that. For example, you might have the ads spawn like this. I think it's really apparent to everyone here that if you're the monk assigned to star, you CC this ad. And if you're the demon hunter assigned to circle, you CC this ad. And while it's really easy to tell from a top-down view when we're just slowly talking about the fight, it could get a bit chaotic in the moment. So just make sure that if you are a DPS with an instant CC, you're just really internalizing the fact that you might have to react very quickly and you might have to do something that's not actually in your quadrant. So be prepared for that. Besides the CC, we also have to deal with this Mossworn Overlord. And the big deal with him is he's going to have an area around him of CC immunity. And so in this example, both of these agonizers would be stuck in it, and the people who would be assigned to CC them or slow them wouldn't be able to do so. And so there's a very particular way that we have to handle this, because if we don't get CCs on them, they'll run to the middle and they'll wipe the raid. So what we're going to do is we're going to CC every single agonizer as they come out. After they come out, it's within a second or two, the Overlord will begin to spawn. And it'll be a very obvious plume of white smoke where he's spawning. At that point, any class with a knockback, so monks, druids, shamans, because they're probably the main classes, but could be a hunter as well. You guys are going to come over here and you're going to get ready. And when the plume of smoke comes out, you're going to go near the plume and you're going to use your knockback to get those ads away from where the Overlord spawns. The Overlord will then spawn, all the DPS will converge upon him and kill him first with the CC on all of the agonizers. Once we kill him, then the DPS will go ahead and kill the agonizers. They'll group them up with either pushes, for example, from a druid pushing them in, or grips from DKs pulling them into the middle. I want to show you what this looks like because I think it's really important, especially for the classes with knockbacks, to know what to look for as we're walking into this boss. So I'm going to show you a clip from Method. And so looking at Method's clip here, the ads are right about to spawn. Okay, there we go. So you can see the ads spawning. They've got like a dark, smoky little circle there. And so those ads will spawn. Those will be the agonizers. So you can actually see what we're talking about, right? There's 3 agonizers over here. So obviously the person on quadrant 2 would CC this, person on quadrant 3 would CC this, and the quadrant 4 guy would CC the guy that's off screen below us. Okay, so back to the Overlord. So on the Overlord, there you go. You can see him spawn right here in this white plume of smoke. And so the people with knockbacks are going to come up and get these agonizers away from it, so his aura of CC immunity does not hit them. And so you'll watch the monk here come ahead and do that. So he drops down a ring of peace, the Overlord spawns, you can see the ring of CC immunity, but because the monk knocked them out, they are not affected by it, and they can remain CC'd while the rest of the raid focuses on this and kills it. So that's the general strategy for dealing with the Overlords. It has to be very quick, it has to be consistent every single time, and he has to die quickly. And so to that note, the brands that go out, the brands must go out and they must hit the ads. So I'm going to pull out this Overlord again. And this is how I want the brands to look. I want the raid to be on the side of the center of the room. And I want the 2 brands to be away from the center of the room. This will allow us to keep brands on ads, but also make sure most of the raid is safe. Why is that important in Mythic? Well, the brands do a lot of damage in Mythic, but they also debuff these ads and make the ads take a ton more damage. And because this fight is so DPS intensive, we absolutely need that on every ad that we're killing. So if we do it this way and keep the big circles, the brands on this side, it gives them a little bit more room to spread out from each other, which they'll need. And then the rest of the raid, you don't really need to spread out from each other. You can all kind of be stacked if you want here. Obviously, the range can, be off in who knows where. But this will help everyone not get hit by brands and also keep the debuff on the ads. Okay, yeah, and once he's dead, obviously we'll group up an AoE. As far as the chains, they're going to come out much more often, and you actually don't have as much time to break them as you did on Heroic. And so, quick note on the chains methodology. It's unchanged from Heroic. The first chain is an insta-break, the second chain is very soon after, and the third chain may be delayed based on raid health, but if the raid's over 50% health, they'll break as soon as that happens. Because the chains have such a limited timer, it'll be really important for us to have a Warlock, to have a gate here that will allow people to instant break them. And if that's the case, we'll go ahead and put down some folks being on the chains. So, the shaman on the first chain here obviously will insta-break. The monk on the second chain will have the chain clicked and ready to walk as the shaman's moving over with his. And he will insta-break after the shaman as long as, we're not almost dead. And the Warlock will grab his chain, walk over to the center and wait for his call, or do an assessment on the health of the raid. If we do not have a Warlock, the line for breaking is probably about here, okay? And so if that's the case, putting these same folks here, the chains will go out, and the shaman will come over, click, and begin walking. The monk will also come over, click, and begin walking. And the Warlock will click and maybe stay about halfway through. The shaman will break. Hopefully everyone will be in a good spot. The monk will break close after that, and the Warlock will be up here ready for his call. And the reason that is needed is because if you wait for the other person to break before you go and click your chain and begin walking, we're not going to have enough time to break all of them. And so you absolutely need to click your chain and walk partway out before the person before you breaks their chain, because you need to be ready to instantly break yours whenever it's called. So that's the chains, and everything else really is just tuned up to a higher degree. Don't get hit by swirlies. Definitely don't get hit by the pizzas. You'll just instantly die from those. We will be heroing on pull again because it's really important that we get a lot of boss damage. This is a tighter fight, and with that in mind, we are going to call the cooldowns of a few classes. So a Windwalker and one of the other DPS, maybe a Hunter, maybe someone else, will be assigned to cooldown the Agonizers, right? So the Agonizers are these 4 adds. So you guys would not be allowed to pop your cooldown until we group the Agonizers up, and then we'll have 2 DPS pop their cooldowns on those. No one else, no other DPS is allowed to pop their cooldowns on those adds. It's going to be bad for your parses. I understand that. But it's how we have to do it because we need more boss damage. Okay, so those 2 people will be assigned to the adds. 1 person will be assigned to pop their cooldowns on the Overlord when he spawns. Okay, it's going to be a high single target class. And then beyond that, everyone else's cooldowns is going to go on the boss. So obviously you don't want to pop it when there's going to be a Tormented Eruption, which is the multiple cones that come out. But other than that, you're popping on cooldown and trying to kill the boss as fast as you can. Because we need to beat that enrage timer. Okay, that pretty much sums up Soul Render Dormazain. I encourage you to go ahead and look up your favorite streamer's guide to Soul Render Dormazain, or maybe one of another guild's kills of Soul Render Dormazain, especially if you're a class that has a knockback or that has to deal with CC. It's really important that we get those mechanics done cleanly and crisply and consistently every single time, or else we will wipe to those adds. But besides that, this is just a standard fight, very close to heroic. Just again, everything else is tuned up to the 10th degree. So with that, thank you guys for attending, and I look forward to killing this boss with everyone.